Empire State Conservatives Podcast, episode 140. It is me, your host, Evan, here with the now infamous Gabe Montalvo, host of Talking GOP and Empire State Conservative Network contributing writer. And today we have a very special guest, Yehudis Gottesfeld, running for the House of Representatives out of New York 17, which is Westchester and Rockland County. Guys, just a reminder here to check out our brand new Emperor Cuomo shirt and all of their gear at EmpireStateConservativeNetwork.com/store. Every cent goes back into spreading conservative values in New York and helping expand our reach. Yehudis, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I know we're kind of all social distancing, but we made it work.
Yeah. If you could just give the folks at home a little bit of your background of why you wanted or where you come from and why you decided to run for New York 17.
Yeah, so I'm a chemical, environmental, nuclear engineer. I come from New York. I grew up in the district in Rockland County. My family always worked in Westchester County, and that's part of the district as well. And so I kind of grew up appreciating both sides. Went to local community college, ended up working my way up, then went to Columbia University. I decided to run because I'm a chemical engineer. It's not one of those things where generally a chemical engineer goes into politics. We usually enjoy the life, we enjoy what we do, and I very, very much do. But seeing politics and seeing especially people in younger and having this one mindset of socialism, when I think we can all understand that there's a matter of balancing a budget, and it's a matter of, do I want the government to force me to do something, and do I want the government to take half of my paycheck? I want to be able to provide for my family. And it was something that I saw the country going in that direction, the younger generation going in that direction. And we're really the future of this country. And, putting my chemical engineering career on hold and saying, I'm going to run for Congress to represent our country and bring the values of family, faith, and freedom back to Congress as, giving a voice to the younger generation and being a strong voice in Congress for these values. So the Democrats can't say, oh, you don't support women, you don't support the younger generation, you're just, what their stereotypes are, because it's not true. I think these values are something that Americans have and Americans believe are right. And that's what's motivated me to get up and run for Congress.
I think that's absolutely where we need to be. That's basic American values, and the Democrat Party has definitely lost sight of that. But you told us before that one of the big things you're running on is less government, which means lowering taxes, obviously. What is your plan for that? Everyone talks about less government, lowering taxes, but, what are we doing in order to keep the government functioning, but also, taking less of the people's money, which I'm all for?
Yeah, I think there's so many inefficiencies. When we talk about less taxes, what the Democrats like to do is they like to come out and say, well, you're going to be causing that poor person on the street to starve, or, you're going to be getting rid of people's benefits. And, that's not the case. When we talk about lowering taxes, we talk about getting rid of corruption. We talk about getting rid of inefficiencies. We all care about the underprivileged. We all care about those who can't take care of themselves. I gave most of my life, I think it's been over 10 years, towards helping the mentally disabled and physically disabled communities, right? We all care for people. We all have big, big hearts, but it's the inefficiencies. It's when government comes in and, our president talks about draining the swamp. It's true. And that's what's causing the high taxes, or at least the way that if we get rid of that, we can lower taxes.
I 100% agree. I mean, there's just way too much. There's too many departments. There's too much bureaucracy going on. Too many unelected officials in Washington. Do you think that you kind of have an advantage as an outsider where you can see the corruption as opposed to people who have just been sitting in Washington where you kind of get blind to it?
I think so. And I think, coming as an outsider is, really a chemical engineer. I'm doing this because I care about my country, because I care about the people in my district, and because I want a better future for all of us. And, not being an outsider has the advantage of being able to do what's right and not being a part of that, of the swamp, I guess. And so I really think I can. I don't plan on being in government forever. I think we can come in, make changes, lower taxes, reduce government control, reduce regulations in industries that are unnecessary. And once we do that, have people then come over and take over, who can promote the same values and keep that going. So I think it's when people go in with the wrong mindsets, I think that's kind of the part of the problem. But I'm definitely going in to help the American people, to help our country, and to bring our values back.
Gabe, anything?
I just think that it's great. Your story is you started off, very locally, going to community college and pursuing your dream in Columbia University, and are now, I also believe that you're enrolled in a doctorate program, or you were previously involved, and you put that on hold to serve the American people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's a great thing, and I think it's very admirable.
Yeah, and I think that's what the American dream is about, And when we talk about the American dream, and you ask a lot of people, do you think the American dream is still alive? A lot of people say no. And, the fact is the American dream is still alive. It's the mindset. It's the mindset of, what the Democratic Party, and, I hate hitting on them, but there's just so much wrong right now that we need to fix there. That, when they're telling people that they can't succeed, that they can't do things, that they need to rely on the government. And that's just not true. I started out at a community college. I paid for everything I've had, from there on out. And, you work your way up. And when I was accepted to the PhD program at Columbia University, I started working for a little bit within government in the water systems in New York, and ended up getting accepted to Columbia's PhD program and deciding to pursue research there. But it's true. It's the American dream, and it's what it's what we need to show America. And it's what we need to bring back to America. So I think it's a matter of just being able to, having lived the American dream, and having experienced it, starting from nothing and really building my way up. I think it's something that we need to bring back to America, and it's something that we need to inspire that hope in Americans, that we can all still achieve the American dream and make it easier with equality of opportunity, so that everybody can really achieve the American dream.
I was just going to ask, were you always a Republican? Were you a moderate? And why if you were a walkaway, how come you switched over to the Republican Party?
So I was not. I was never a Democrat. Growing up, a lot of Jews are Democrats, just traditionally. And I think that's kind of a stereotype, and there are reasons for that. I haven't always been a registered Republican. When I started out, I was actually an independent, kind of having Republican values. My family's always had Republican values. My family's always been a Republican family. But going out, when I was 18, I decided I'm going to be independent and I'm going to choose my own path. And so I started out there, and then soon after I switched to the Republican Party, realizing, there's just no question about it.
Yeah, I think you really hit on it, though. It's not that the American dream is dead. It's that people have lost the drive to work for it. People want things handed to them nice and easy. You take out your phone and you can access anything on the internet. They want the same way with the American dream. They want to finish college, get that job right out of college, and just in a few years be able to buy a house and be, on the way to being millionaires. And that's not the way.
Yeah, I took a terrible job that I didn't like right after college, because, that's what you do. You work your way up, and I went to social events with different, groups, and I was a part of the Chemist Club, and I ended up working my way up in the Chemist Club, which is a prestigious club in New York City with Merck and DuPont and big chemical companies, till I was running events there, and, worked my way up in that. But I think that it's, you have to start out from those jobs. And it's one of those things where right now we have all these giveaways that the government is giving out. And when people get comfortable with living off the government and kind of having this quasi-socialist government, I don't think it's good for our country. I don't think it's good for our country for people to get used to and get comfortable to living off the government, taking off the government.
Yeah, because then the government decides that they're taking it away and you're left with nothing.
Yeah, and that's going to happen. And it's not because the government's mean, but it's because there's a limited amount of money. There's only so much that can go around. And I think it's one of the fact that there isn't is one of the lies that people have been told. I mean, everybody knows when they go home, there's a limited amount of money. You have to balance your budget. The government is the same way. Money comes from somewhere.
I mean, didn't CNN just report that the entire world was $24 trillion in debt or something like that? I don't know who we're in debt to. Like, how can the whole world be in debt? That doesn't make any sense.
China. All in debt to China.
I think and I think right now, like personally, I think after this whole coronavirus, I think China should take away our debt. I think they should forgive our debt.
We should just cancel it. I don't think we need to ask for permission for that. They caused all this nonsense. But
I think they do need to pay, and I think that's one of the ways they're going to need to pay.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing coming out of this coronavirus will be fixing the economy. So to get it back up and running, to get small businesses going, which are the backbone of this economy, even though, Walmart and Target can be open, but, your local shops can't because, they're too small to keep clean, apparently, or they're too small to, be able to have people social distance. What would you bring to the Fed in order to help these small businesses get up and running without, increasing taxes or, increasing spending too much?
I mean, I think it's wrong that the small businesses shouldn't be running in business. Big businesses should, right? A lot of it, I think, is government interest, where big businesses may donate more to governments and small businesses may not. And I think the big businesses are at an advantage when they don't have the small businesses because there's less competition for them. So it's in their advantage. The small businesses are struggling, and that's, the mom and pop shops. There's so many families that are really, really struggling from that. And, we'll see the effects of it afterwards. And I think, getting the economy back up and running, making it so that if you're at a high risk, if you have the virus, or if you need or choose to stay home, you can work from home. But for the other people who are taking care of themselves and want to take go out with a mask and with all the precautions, it's kind of just like, if someone else has a flu, someone had a low immune system, they wouldn't just walk out without a mask. My brother had cancer for 2.5 years. He had a low immune system for his entire life. And he wouldn't walk out without a mask when his immune system was really low. And he understood that his life was at danger. And I think we can all do that as Americans, as common sense individuals. We can understand that when our life is at danger, we want to take precautions. And the government shouldn't have to, kind of treat us as children and say that, you can't do this and this and this, and you can't go to work. Because we want to work, and that's a good thing. We should be incentivizing and promoting people to go out and work.
I mean, that is the biggest problem, is that the government has replaced parents in a large portion of Americans' homes. And that's what's led to this big government mindset where people are looking at Bill de Blasio, who goes, "Oh, you guys can't protest." It's like, well, you can't tell us we can't protest. You can't tell us we can't assemble, and you can't tell us we can't say what we want to say. That's not your job to do that.
And it's one of the most insulting things, like when they tell women that, we have to be a Democrat, or, we have to think this and this and this. And it's like, what, you think we can't think for ourselves? You think that we can't think and decide to do what's best for ourselves? Why do you need to tell me what to do? Why do I need to give you my money so that you can then do what you want, what you think is in the best interest for me with my money? Right? I can't think for myself. I can't decide what's best for me and my family with my money. And I think it's only insulting. There's no other word for it. It's just insulting.
Mm-hmm. And it's so weird that we're seeing that the idea of the nuclear family or family culture being brought back through this lockdown, this stay, and whatever you want to label it. And it seems that a good portion of parents on social media are posting how difficult it is. It's almost as if this wasn't their job as parents in the first place, is to take care of their own kids. But
I think a lot of parents work. A lot of parents work in that society. It is very, very difficult to be at home with kids the entire day when, you may not be used to that. Going out to work, you kind of have a break. And I think it's extremely difficult to be with them the entire day when they're sitting over you and screaming over you. They're not in school, they're not with their teacher or whatever. So I think that's kind of where a lot of that's coming from. But there is something to parenting that we've lost in the society.
Another big thing that we had a problem with before this virus is that a large portion of our economy, a lot of our medicine and stuff like that, and essentials were coming from China. How do we avoid that pitfall next time we have something like the coronavirus, where we can avoid a lockdown, where we don't have to wait on supplies? It doesn't have to be, oh, we don't have tests, oh, we don't have masks, because, we have them either stockpiled or we have them some other way. What is the way that we bring back, I guess, manufacturing of these things back to the United States?
Yeah, so I think, that's kind of my area, as a chemical engineer. I mean, I've dealt, we deal with pharmaceuticals and, rare earth elements, which are two things that China really controls the industry of. And it's about diversifying our portfolio, right? It would be nice to make everything in America, but at the same time, just for national security, if something happens to the American supply, as a supplier, you don't want to make everything in one place in one business, because if something happens, your entire supply is down. right? So putting everything in China is a really bad decision. I think we should bring majority of it back to America because we need to increase American jobs. And at the end of the day, we know that we can really only rely on ourselves. And, we've seen that right now with China where, we thought that we can bring our businesses there and we learned we couldn't. But I think we need to also diversify the portfolio. And China's given a lot of incentive to American companies to go there. But it's time we bring them back. And I think they realize the importance where you even see it in the fashion industry. A lot of different clothing lines are going down. And I don't work for the fashion industry. I don't have, close ties in the fashion industry, but I can only guess it's because the production and design areas in different countries are down now. And now what do? There's nothing here in America. And so I think we need to start bringing things back, and I think we will. But I also think it's diversifying portfolios where taking stuff out of China, bringing it back to America, and also diversifying it a little bit in other countries so that in case something happens in America, something happens in another country, we have supplies that we can reach into and take out to protect Americans.
Gabe?
Oh no, I think that's a very fair point in ensuring that you don't have all all of your eggs parked in one basket, because this whole pandemic has, I think, woken a lot of people up to how fragile a lot of businesses really were to something like this. And I mean, it's really horrible. The restaurant right by me, across the street from me, that just opened in 2018 is now closed. They're not able to come back to, those guys aren't able to come back to their jobs. And it isn't a manufacturing business per se, but just this entire pandemic, I feel, has shown that we need to be prepared for something like this next time. I think we did get a little bit too comfortable, but at the same time, this wasn't our fault. And I personally believe that on the federal level, we've done a lot of things right, but here in the state level, and even for me in the city, it's become more a game of politics than it has of actual listening to doctors and medicine and actual science.
Oh, it's one of the complaints that I have about Governor Cuomo. I mean, I don't know if what he's doing is effective or not, and I think a lot of us don't, even though we all like to think that he's doing something. But it was one of those games of politics where they come out and they do something and say, I'm doing what's in the best interest of everyone else, right? But if Republican governors now are reopening the economy, and a lot of Americans are screaming, we're hurting. A lot of New Yorkers are screaming, we're hurting. Our businesses are down. We don't have an income. Our families are struggling. Like, we're hurting, and nothing's being done about that. And I think that's a concern that people need to look at. When it comes to just politics and talking politics, he may have good ratings right now, but what's going on with all those Americans and New Yorkers that are hurting? What is he doing for them?
I mean, he's doing basically nothing. He's holding us hostage for a bailout from the federal government. When we were $6 billion in debt before the coronavirus, now apparently we're $61 billion in debt, and he's going to hold us hostage for that bailout. He's going to say, we're going to have to cut police, we're going to have to cut fire, we're going to have to cut teachers. Instead of cutting, all this other spending that he's doing in
social programs.
Yeah, cut welfare programs. All this other stuff where it's excessive spending. Whichever one, Medicaid, Medicare, I always mix those two up. The one that's giving healthcare to illegal immigrants, cut the funding to that. Why should our children suffer and lose after-school programs, which a lot of these parents need, and you're going to give free college, driver's licenses, and healthcare to illegal immigrants?
According to the Blasio, they have rights, which is oxymoronic because people who have rights belong to the country, and the country has the ability to protect their citizens as they're a sovereign nation. My thoughts, at least.
No, I think Governor Cuomo disagrees, Gabe.
I'm sorry about Fiora Cuomo. No, sorry, it was Herr Cuomo, Fiora de Blasio, Wilhelm de Blasio.
But Yehudi, we're talking. A lot of Americans are struggling, and Washington is just printing money. Their latest $3 trillion the HEROES Act?
The HEROES Act, right.
Which passed in the House.
It's a great name.
Which will be shot dead in the Senate. Listen, I've said it before, the Democrats are very good at public relations. They know how to portray themselves as, the champion of the people, when in reality they are just the champion of the government. But this thing will get shot down. But how do we I guess my question is, how do we get the money to the people who need it? without all this extra garbage in these bills. You know, they're putting money in for illegal immigrants. They're putting money in for all this stuff that has nothing to do with helping out the people or helping out small businesses. How are you going to be able to fight back in the House against someone like Nancy Pelosi, who apparently has an iron grip on a lot of the members in the House?
I think it's about calling it out for what it is, right? They get away with messaging the way they message, right? Where they have the Heroes Act, you know, they have they message things in ways that they make it almost seem like they're the good guys. And being able to come back and say, no, you're not the good guys, right? We can all message this the same. And I think that's the importance of having minorities in Congress and on the Republican Party as well, where we can say when they start speaking to, you know, oh, the minorities that are struggling with this and this, and we can come up and say, no, you know, that's not what we want. That's not what's going to help us. That's not true. And just throwing the truth in their face, because right now they're getting away with lying and there's nobody that's able to stand up to them and say from a different perspective that that's not true. You know, this is what you're trying to do. Like, just call them out for their BS.
Gabe?
Right. Oh, I say this sarcastically, of course, but the best way to get us out of this is just print more money. You know, that's what we got to do. Got to get those numbers up. We got to chop down as many trees as possible, because, you know, you got to deforest the area to then put up the wind turbines, which will give everyone jobs apparently and help us with our energy crisis, or however the Democrats want to label it. And then we'll use the timber to print more money. So, you know, just kidding, of course, again. But I think this situation is really funny that the Democrats do have a great PR team, and they created the Dreamers. They called you know, these little illegal, you know, immigrant children, you know, Dreamers. And I wish that I too could commit Social Security fraud and identity fraud and still get away with it just because I dream. And that's the case that we see with these things. But again, it's wordplay. It's to play on your emotions.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's like, it's, I had a Democrat interview me the other day, and they asked, you know, what are you going to do about, you know, all the people at the border who are trying to come over? And, you know, and it was funny because that morning I actually spoke to an immigrant from Mexico. My district has a large Central American population. And I just spoke to him that morning, and he was almost crying on the phone, saying that he came over and he left his family from when he was a little kid, and it was the hardest thing he ever had to do. And now the taxes are so high, he may have to move out and leave his family again, and he just can't bear it. And I told the guy on the phone, I'm like, you know, it's you're messaging it one way, but that's not true. Like, you know, there's pain on both sides, and basically, for all intents and purposes, get your facts straight before you put emotion into it.
Yeah, but not even that. Like, if you want to strike out and, you know, make your way in America, sometimes you have to make sacrifices. My grandfather came here from Germany at 13. He had to leave his entire family behind. They all ended up being murdered in the Holocaust. But he had to come here. He had to be sponsored. He had to stay with his uncle. You know, he had to learn English. He had to make a lot of sacrifices in order to have a better life for my mom and her sister eventually. And then for us, you know, you have to make sacrifices. This whole issue is that everyone wants the end game, but they don't want the struggle. They don't want the sacrifice. You can't have everything you want in life. That's not the way it works. If you want to make $1 million, or you want to be a lawyer, you want to be, you know, all of these things, a doctor, you have to put in the work. You're not going to have the family life that you want. You're not going to have these things. You have to make choices in your life, and you have to be willing to live with those choices. You don't become a millionaire by sitting on your ass. It doesn't happen, and people aren't willing to concede that.
That's very true. And, you know, we've said this on the show before, that financial literacy is something that a lot of people should be, you know, taking into account and how to better themselves in their situation. But one of the first jobs I actually worked was at a suit store called Quails. And you know, my store where I was working at has a very high immigrant population, whether it be legal or illegal. But when I would speak to my clientele or my customers, I would ask them, oh, like, you know, what part of you know, South America are you from? You know, I noticed your accent. They'd be like, oh, Colombian, Ecuadorian, and then they'll go down to wherever their origin. And then they would say, you know, honestly, I thought the U.S. would be different. I'm like, why? They said, because it's so much work to live here and to, you know, be happy here. And I said, Yes, it is, because it doesn't come easy. But that money that you're making here is worth a lot more money than what you were making back there. And you have to kind of be appreciative for what you got. And if you're not satisfied, continue looking for ways to network and continue to build your profile.
Yeah.
You have to work to improve your station in life. The people think that, oh, I went to a 4-year college, someone's going to hand me a job. We had all those Occupy Wall Street people. Hey, geniuses, there was no jobs in finance. Why did you major in finance? Like, people, you need to use your head. If you're not guaranteed anything in this life, I would love to be a professional hockey player. Guess what? It's not going to happen. It was never going to happen. I didn't start playing ice hockey until I was like 15 years old. It wasn't going to happen. I needed to start at 3, and I needed to be probably a little bit taller. But, you know, everyone wants what they want, and they're not willing to just realize that if you really want something, sometimes you don't get that dream job. But if you want to make $1 million, maybe you have to work in an industry you hate. It's just the way it is. But moving on to our last little segment, Yehudis, you told us about a little story, a little inside information you had on everyone's favorite Congresswoman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and her little Green New Deal while you were at Columbia. So if you can just give the listeners at home that story, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yes. So I am an environmental engineer, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tries to make that her issue, which, you know, is fine if I guess there's a little bit more science behind it. But, you know, having been in the lab and, you know, researching this topic, I was at Columbia University, and her writer came to our group of environmental engineers and asked us to join the meeting to work on the Green New Deal. I think they kind of wanted that technical expertise, whether they really wanted it or they just wanted to put it on a paper. I'll never know. But they asked us to join, and there was a lot of policy majors as well, and policy experts from Columbia University that were there. And I went with my friend, and I knew what I was getting myself into. You know, I knew exactly what it was about. And I went in to just kind of question them, you know, hear what they had to say. And I sat down and asked them, you know, how do you plan on paying for this? You know, first they came up with this whole big plan, you know, that went from here till, you know, the end of the world. And I said, wow, that sounds like a lot. How do you plan on paying for that? And they spoke about the government having an unlimited amount of money, you know, kind of saying, you know, well, there's a lot of money in the federal government. And I said, but that's coming from us. You know, like, there isn't an unlimited amount of money, and you never asked us if we wanted to pay for this. So now you're saying that this is something that you're making us all invest in. So let's see if we even want to invest in it, right? Let's see if it's even a good idea, because you're about to use our money for this. We should have a say. And so they we went on and they started talking about the technical side of things, or, you know, what they considered the technical side of things, which was mostly just messaging and, you know, talking points and things like that, with some ideas, which, you know, I'm not sure are the smartest ideas, like getting rid of fights and things, but just they started throwing out that we can go completely renewable by tomorrow. And I don't know, you know, where they heard that. And the woman that was there said that someone in DC had told them, you know, word was going around DC, like this was an official thing, that we can go completely renewable by tomorrow. And I was with a group of environmental engineers, and we kind of all looked at each other, and nobody wanted to say anything. And, you know, I turned around and I was like, but we'll last for 20 minutes. Like, you know, we can't just completely switch to renewable by tomorrow. First of all, that's a massive, massive cost that we'll have to incur, right? The benefit of it is, you know, you haven't even listed the benefit of it. Will it be more reliable, right? They're not supporting, when they say that they want to go, you know, zero emissions, you know, and the whole Green Party decides that they're not supporting nuclear. It's so hypocritical. And there's just so much kind of in the basic science that was lacking from what they had available. And it was just all messaging like, oh, we should get rid of this, we should get rid of that, we should get rid of this. And I think we can all agree that it's good to clean up the environment, right? There's so much science that we don't understand, and there's so much that we don't know really what all the pollution in the atmosphere can do to us. And it can't hurt to clean it up, right? If I think we all support cleaning the environment, the question is, does the government impose their control onto our lives to clean up the environment? And that's the question, at what cost? Right? We all agree that we should clean up the environment, and it's always good to have clean air. We buy air fresheners in our house. You know, all want clean air. We want to live a healthier life. but at what cost? And that's the thing that they just fail to address. And I mean, getting rid of planes, I don't even know if that would even be a good idea, but just going to renewables. I went to it was a plastics recycling plant in Brooklyn, and I spoke to them there. They had a wind turbine, and I said, "Oh, cool. A lot of places in New York City don't have wind turbines. That's kind of unique. How is this working for you? How efficient is it? How much energy are you getting out of it?" And they said it works about 14 to 17% of the year. And I said, wow, and it keeps jamming up, and it costs a lot of money for maintenance. And
the blades don't even last that long, and they have to be replaced in these wind turbines.
The technology just isn't there. I think, we
right.
support, renewable energy, and how cool would it be if we can really all get our energy from the sun? Like, that would be amazing. But we need the technology to be there so that we're not just throwing something onto people that doesn't work and saying, pay for it, and then you'll be left with nothing.
That's how Democrats do. It's all flash, no substance. It's everything looks good on paper, but there's nothing there to execute it.
And when you're talking about people's lives, that's so dangerous. Right? When you're talking about people's lives and saying, give me everything you have, give me your entire bank account, I'll give you this wind turbine, and then it only works 14 to 17% of the year, then that person suffers, that person is hurt.
I mean, the government has solved the war on drugs and on poverty, and they've created world peace. I mean, we've trusted the government to do all that. I mean, they can't even run the post office at a profit. It's been in the red for 12 years. Like, this is ridiculous. I don't understand why anyone would trust the government to do anything.
My question is this, and it really just came to me as you were explaining this. How would you address, let's say we eventually start to develop a technology where we can move away from, let's say coal, or from drilling or fracking. How would you, and we have a great opportunity to, use solar. What happens to the people that lose their jobs because, solar is the way to go now in energy?
Yeah, I don't think we should ever get rid of one form of energy. I don't think we should ever get rid of anything entirely. I think we always need a diverse portfolio so that everything can balance each other out, right? If you have a hurricane, you'll need one form of energy and the other ones will go out. So I don't think we should ever get rid of one. I think in terms of coal and in terms of, what the environmental sector calls dirty energies, there's a lot of information that I guess the science world has that other people haven't had for some reason, but there's a lot of technologies that can clean up the feed, right? I think we don't want dirty feeds coming out. We see in China, without this coronavirus, they walk around in the summer in certain areas with masks just because of all the pollution, right? In South Korea, they get the pollution also at times when the winds are directed that way, and they have to wear masks too, right? So we don't want to do that. We want a clean environment. We want clean air, but there are actually technologies that clean up the feed. And, there are technologies that can recycle, take the fumes and the feed coming out of different forms of energy and turn it into something else, or sometimes even clean it up and put it back depending on what form of energy it is. So I think we don't actually need to get rid of, what they don't have an investment in, or for some reason they don't support. I think we can clean up those forms of energy to clean up the environment, because that's always what you want to do. Whenever, if there's new technology that, hey, someone knocks on your door and says, hey, I have this new thing that can clean up your house. It's like, cool, I'll go for that. It's always better to have a cleaner feed and a cleaner environment. So I think that's something that, each individual company, I think would be investing in, and I think should be investing in it. But I also think you don't want to get rid or really demote a certain form of energy. And we've seen it in the nuclear industry, where the nuclear industry has been chastised so much. And now the fact that it doesn't release any emissions, and people are realizing the technology we have is actually safe. And, nuclear energy is actually a safe form of energy. It's really just been hurt because of the messaging bites that people put out, when really it could have helped us for so much and decreased our energy costs. That's one of the biggest benefits of nuclear energy.
I see. Wow. And, you're not actually the only one who's had an incident with some of the AOC crew. Back when she was running, I actually got to meet her, her campaign manager in Queens, or whoever she was at the time, at a homeowners association meeting. And she was talking about how not only does she want to abolish ICE, but she wanted to cut military spending because, you know, we're just spending too much on bombs. That was her biggest thing. They were spending too much on bombs. And I was really stunned. So afterwards, I called up to her, to the manager, and I asked her, I said, so why was your focus on, like, you know, this technology, the military technology that we're, you know, that we're using, that we're actually using and developing, and it's getting better and better. Why do you want to cut back on that sort of research? And why do you want to cut back on the amount of deterrents that we have? And she said, well, because we're not using them. I said, yes, that's why they are deterrents, so that we don't drop them, A. And B, if we're going to an area that will have no civilian casualties or effects on the population once the conflict is over, why would we send, you know, 50 guys to a compound when we can just drop one bomb because we know that it's going to hit them? Because it helps us minimize our casualty rate and get back home. Excuse me. And her campaign manager's response literally was, well, my father served. That was it.
That's a great response. I mean, that just solves everything, Gabe.
Right. And I said, well, thank you for your father's service. And then she said, well, you know, even, I think she said even Reagan, or was it Kennedy, that's even warned us about the industrial military complex. I said, yeah, I think we should all be worried about corporatism. But the fact of the matter is that this technology is what we have in the military, is to ensure that people get back home. The point isn't just to send boots on the ground with a stick, you know, yell charge, because we're trying to just cut back on our defense spending, because we've seen that every time that we lower it, someone thinks that they can step up and be aggressive.
Yeah, it's funny. I should start using that. My grandfather did serve, so I should just start using that now.
Mine did too. I'm gonna start using that. That's
yeah. No, but it's I think it's kind of what you see in China, right? Where they have the argument of we should trust other countries. We should just trust them. And you know what we see in China, what we see with the nuclear treaty, it's we can't trust another country mainly because they don't have our best interest in mind, right? I just heard recently that we gave during the Obama administration, our country gave money to China to research the effects of coronavirus on bats. And I mean, whether that's, if that was true, and I just recently heard it, I haven't had time to look into it, but if that's true, the fact that they basically took advantage of us, right? Like, we can't trust other countries. We can't trust China. And, there was no congressional oversight. That was kind of the clincher. And, where we can't trust another country to do the right thing. I think as people, we're all good people, and we would do the right thing by someone else. But there are people and countries out there that don't have the best interest of our country in mind. And I think it was in 2012 or something when China, during a conference with Austria or Australia, said that their plan was to take over the world, so that they want to. And, it's these countries don't have our best interests in mind. We need to be able to defend ourselves, and they can sweet talk us and they can say whatever they want. But at the end of the day, when we have the responsibility to take care of American citizens, we need to take that seriously and do what's in the best interest to make sure that nobody gets hurt.
Awesome.
I agree. I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Yehudis, if you could just tell the folks at home where they can find you online and where they can donate to your campaign, should they choose to do so.
Yes. So you can find me online at www.yehudisforcongress.com. So that's YEHUDISFOR Congress.com. And you could donate there as well. Social media, my handle is Yehudis for NY. So that's YEHUDIS for FORNY.
All right, guys, that is our show. Make sure that you follow Gabe on social media. Gabe, tell the people where they can find you on social media. It's too many different things.
All right, thank you so much. So you can now find me on Google if you just type in Gabriel Montalvo and select news. But I won't bother you with that. On Instagram, you can type in baron.montalvo, and on Twitter, baron_Montalvo. And I'll keep it that way because it pisses off Evan. And you can find me on Facebook at Gabriel E. Montalvo. And if you support the Hispanic Conservative Movement, please check us out and send us a message at Republican National Hispanic Assembly New York chapter on Facebook.
And guys, make sure you check out Gabe's article that's on EmpireStateConservaNetwork.com. Hopefully there will be many, many more to follow if he doesn't get too famous for us. But guys, make sure to follow us on Instagram at GetRedPilledOnY, on Facebook at Empire State Conservatives, on Twitter at Empire State Cons, and make sure that you listen to our show on any audio platform. Remember, we get a little bit of money every time you listen, so that is any audio platform besides SoundCloud, Empire State Conservatives Podcast. And make sure you check out our store at EmpireStateConservaNetwork.com/store for all of our amazing snowflake melting gear. For that, wash your hands and don't let fear take your freedom.